Well, hello everyone. Here to show you right here is the 16th anniversary of September 11th right here. Have right here is this drawing painting that I went ahead and worked right here using the Photoshop and illustration skills right here. And I still have that old Time magazine up, for talk about September 11th attacks of whenever the first plane hit and whenever the second plane hit the World Trade Center, and then the other one that hit the Pentagon, and as well as for other details too. But you see right here, I'm talking about with this painting right here. And the way I put this together right here is I worked a lot of this in Photoshop just to make this look like a little bit like the town, for New York City. Make it look like, I don't know if it was uptown or downtown New York City. Right there is an example right there of a bridge. But just getting some ideas just by looking at a magazine. And I know if anybody were to think that if you would go back to the last 3 years of September 11th, the postal dispatches, or if any source of newspaper, then you would look to see about any details about images about what the city looked like back then. And you have right here is the plane right here. But I want to mention to everybody here about that this right here is some of my classwork right here from back then. It's like it's been like 16 years or so, but you see right here is the English skills right here. It says right here is to where is my Teddy Carr, and see Teddy Carr and block, and then you have right here's the question mark right there. So yeah, that this was it shows right here the date right here. It shows right here for August the 28th of 2001. So you're like Warren toward it for August the 28th. That just thinking that would have been about 11 days, something like that, before the September 11th attacks. And when I have on my art store that I on here, like topofcurious.com / Matthew 31314. But talking about that I have some of these prints available on the art shop. So if anybody if they want to go and order a print, and then you'll be able to order one of those from the art shop. But talking about right here, with this right here will be some of the English, like the English work right here. So we see right there is a date right there, and then we also see where is my Teddy Carr. And then that block, and then have right here is for what is your favorite holiday, Christmas. My favorite holiday is Christmas. So it's like, yeah, that while you were in school, that this is the stuff that I was working on during my class year. And if I can remember right, yeah, I don't know if this was right on maybe August the 30th. I'm like, yeah, 16 years ago would have been maybe the 29th, or maybe September the 1st, something like that, whenever I was practicing with this my writing skills about how spelling test, that if we can remember the spelling test, that whenever you get one wrong, that they would ask you to write it 5 times, and and then by 3 days later, and then they want you to take another test again. But with this, and I don't know if this might have been an activity I was doing in class, such as when because like anybody say that September 11th was like a day to where that it was planned maybe by the Al Qaeda in Afghanistan, but the American people, to where that if you could have maybe be at a meeting, or maybe at the doctor's appointment or something like that, or maybe in some training course, or you could have been out on the roads until all of a sudden that you wound up hearing the news about America was under attack. And this is stuff that would just come up all of a sudden. And if anybody were to warn toward it, that it seems like it didn't give you enough time to react to where that whenever you spelt warning, you spelled poison wrong, and then you spelled police wrong, and then first aid kit. So if anybody will warn toward it, that almost everybody's going to be carrying a first aid kit around somewhere. That'll include a few band-aids and maybe some rubbing alcohol, or if it's anything such as maybe chapstick or anything. I'm like anything to where for anything that such as urgent matters that there would be like a first aid kit that you would find around. And just thinking as to where that on that day of September 11th, that if we were to think about that, to where that the type of first aid kit that we would have access to, from the amount of time that we had to react to, where from the time that the plane flew into, I guess if it was the South Tower and the second plane hit the North Tower or something like that. But anyway, but you got right there is this right here. So at the same time while I was in class at practicing with my spelling skills, and it's like, yeah, that I did not write down the dates to all this right here. So I was like wondering to a little bit what that was all about, to where I have right here for August, say August the 28th. And I'm thinking that by about maybe September the 1st or maybe the 3rd, something like that. I say, was that a Friday or a Monday? But I'm like, yeah, if September 11th during that time was on a Tuesday, then I'm thinking that this paper would have been, about 11 days. So that would probably been maybe on a Monday or Tuesday that week before, before September 11th. But whenever I was in class, at a lot of times that they would ask you to write about maybe 2-3 paragraph paper about what do you think our country should do about the people responsible for the attacks, and talking about that for whenever the planes took off, and so far as our airport security. And the way I painted this right here, I was also looking at this also while I was doing the Photoshop work, but there will probably be a few buildings right here in the background, and just I could have maybe added in some more artistic detail right there for what we see right there. Talk about the buildings, and then as well as if that's I don't think that's the Hudson River right there, or some river where the bridge crosses, but there's some parts of New York City around near where the World Trade Center once stood on September 11th. But you see right here is that the details that I went, I'll go ahead and use right here these colors right here. But got right here is the details right here that I worked at the plane right here. You got right here is a United Airlines plane right here, if we can see this right here. But with the plane right here, that whenever we're looking at the plane, that it's like, that with the plane right there, that whenever it's say that there was about 4 hijacked airplanes that were headed, that one of them was headed towards Washington D.C. and the other one was crashed in the field out there in Pennsylvania, but still that drawing the plane right there, and then drawing the World Trade Center right there. And it seems like if anybody were to kind of look back 16 years ago, that if anybody were to think that to where that there was, I think that there was some situations that were going on in maybe parts of Oklahoma. I think back in 1998, something like that, there was some issues going on, but still anything about what's called terrorist, and as well as anything else that goes on so far as to talk about attacks or anything like that. But this is something that like anybody that says to where if you're going to be in the middle of something, and then you don't expect to hear a loud noise or a crash or maybe a loud explosion or anything like that, and I can tell anybody here that, no, you were not I was not at a friend's house on September 11th. I was in school, actually. And if anybody were to say that if you were maybe in study hall class, or maybe if you were working on your homework and trying to improve your grade score, and find out that the principal had announced that there has been 2 planes that struck the World Trade Center. And so this was a class project right here. And drawing in the World Trade Center right here, and I know if anybody will warrant toward it that you do not include the details about whenever the first plane hit and whenever the second plane hit, because this I guess if it was the South Tower or something like that, I'll go ahead and just draw some details right there. But the plane would have hit at about right here. So that meant is to where that this building right here would have been in smoke right around 9:45 a.m., something like that, Eastern time. So whenever the plane hit, if we can see this right here, whenever the plane hit, that it's I guess to say it hit on this side. It hit on this side, so that meant to where it anything debris and stuff. I kept thinking too that that there was a lot of offices in those buildings right there, but they have right there is the World Trade Center right there, and whenever the plane hit, there were a number of offices that were right in there. That whenever the plane hit, that it was like, that there were more likely there could have been people working in the building during that time. They could have maybe been in a conference room or something, working in their offices, and then they don't expect to see that. They don't expect to be there, and like anybody say, especially if you're going to be in an impact zone. If you're going to be in an impact zone, then they don't expect to see that right there. So that right there is the details right there. Whenever that, I say United Airlines, I'm trying, 170 or something, that crashed into the south and in the north tower. That it would have crashed at about, the plane would have, it was probably in the center of the building. So whenever the plane crashed, it flew right into the building right there. I'm like, I did not include those details in the Photoshop painting, but I'm just drawing them by pencil here so we can see. So that if anybody say if you were doing a presentation in the classroom and thinking as to where that you were trying to show everybody about for what damage, try to draw, you're trying to explain the story just by picture, and I say if you're likely looking at some of the writing right here, and if you just want to look at some of the pictures that I drew, but anyway, I know whenever I was in school that people, it was a half day at school. So if anybody warns as to where that whenever you were in class, that it was a half day, so there was a lot of teachers that had to go to meetings right around 11:30, 12 o'clock noon, so they were not able to watch the whole television program about what was going on out there in New York City. But I can remember that that they were showing the news on there. But if I can remember right, that a lot of the classwork that we all were having to do, that it's like something to where that did you ever have to make up for that missed work, or did you were able to catch up with some of the work that you missed? But it's like you're like Warren, to where whenever the country is under attack, that sometimes it seems like to where that for how we call is to where if you're excused from something that you were working on, if it was due to an urgent matter, and but for this right here, that 16 years is a long time ago, and like anybody say, if anybody who had lost loved ones from the attacks, or maybe if there's anybody who has a permanent injury, that they can maybe say that even though if it was 16 years ago, it seems like just like yesterday, or that something just comes up unexpected. And so that's what I was thinking too, that as of 10 a.m. that nearly 2,700 or so, up to 3,000 Americans that were killed in those planes and in the buildings and in, at the Pentagon. So we're like warned toward it that from the September 11th attacks, that that from whenever the planes hit the buildings, that you're just like warned toward it that that's just something that it's something that you don't see every day, is what we might say also. But then I'll go and use right here as a pen. But we also can maybe think as to where that this right here, I guess the president said it was planned by Al Qaeda, I say by Afghanistan, to where that they plan to fly those planes, hijack the aircrafts and then fly them, and then use them as a target. Use them as a target towards the buildings, towards the World Trade Center. And my speech teacher told me at one time that they were thinking about also about the targeting for the Statue of Liberty, but you're like one to where that for any source of terrorists that you hear that quite a bit, to where that whenever terrorists that the details right here are the buildings right here, but that with nowadays with our airport security that they would have it to where that for what went wrong during that time with the airport security then and compared to now. And if anybody was to where, well, maybe they should have some specific training. Maybe they should be taking a spelling test because nearly 2 weeks before September 11th, that if anybody were to say that whenever you were in school during that time, that if there's something that maybe you could have done just to prevent you, but still that we're talking about identifications, identifications that could have been recognized to where the people who are getting on the plane are not Americans. Some of them that could be in the country illegally, and I guess that they seen that is to where that they seen that before it was too late. That some of those the people who board the airplanes were not did not have say valid passports, or they there was a number of things that which call that that sounded that red flag right there. And it seems like to where that looking at this right here, and if anybody say that if you were to write maybe a 15 paragraph story about what you would have done if the situation came up like that, to where that a plane that hit the building, or maybe if there was an incident that went on and you had to evacuate the building for any reason at all. But still, that situations like this, that first thing that people might say is to where, yeah, well, it was 16 or it was 27 years ago, get over it. But still, that we can make thing is to where that we're going to have situations like this, and the best thing that we can really do to control is to kind of keep in mind about for what the supply, what terrorists are going to use, so far as the things that they know that oh yeah, I think I can get by with it this time because I got special equipment, I got special applies, or they know what they can use, so they're going whenever people say that whenever people are up to something, that it seems like that they're kind of working around the security measures, to where that nowadays with airport security, that they have these, which call these high advanced security measures. But let's just say that that during the time I was in class, and if I drew the details of these buildings as like after the towers were hit and then whenever they collapsed, and when I can tell anybody here that whenever I first seen this on the news, I seen that the towers collapse. That at first I was like, Warren, to where, why they tear the buildings down for? Because it looked like that the buildings did not fall down. It looks like that they were torn down. And I wonder too that why is it that the buildings, the World Trade Center, why is it that the buildings look like that they were torn down? Like they tore them down because they got tired of looking at them on fire or something like that. The buildings. So I guess you say it was the North Tower that was the first tower to fall, but still, from what it looked like, even on the news, as to where it looked like the buildings were torn down. So that was my number one question. That it was like I think it was about 12 weeks, 12 days. It was like 12 days before after the attacks that I can remember. I asked that question to where that why is it that they tore the buildings down. And according to what they say, reporters, to where the towers collapsed. The towers collapsed. That they didn't. Nobody tore the buildings down. The towers collapsed after the planes hit, and then the towers collapsed. And I guess a lot of it had to do with the jet fuel that contained inside the aircrafts. That the fuel that was in the aircrafts that caused the failures to what was keeping the buildings. And infrastructure, what kept the steel standing and all that. But really, that I don't know if they ever found out about what went wrong with that either. But But still, that 16 years ago, that just thinking as to where you tell the story, even to if it's to a friend of yours or maybe to the grandkids or anybody, that if you were born between the year of 2004 or maybe 2010, that people are like warned to where that. They of course they don't remember. That was before they were born. So it seems like a lot of parents will maybe think that to where that incidents like this that come up before a child is born. On that day of September 11th, maybe that could have been a day from whenever you were engaged, to somebody, or maybe if you were dating or you were working at a small business, and then within 16 years later, that you wind up having children, and then you just wind up explaining to anybody about what happened on that day, that day that you aren't going to forget, and then if that was that on that day that could have been before your son or daughter was born, or maybe the grandchild was born, and you were to tell them the story about what happened on September 11th. Is that 4 hijacked airplanes, and what happened in New York City during the time also. But there you have it, talking about right there of the World Trade Center. And that if anybody drawing the details right there at the buildings, but anyway, so I want to point that out right there. There's a classwork, but I know with me though that like anybody say, that if you're going to have a learning disability, and just thinking as to where a number of problems that you have so far as getting something, a word correct or anything, but still that with drawing in the details about this right here, that you're like warned to where that maybe if you're able to capture any artwork from any photos that were not captured maybe on the actual media, or just the details about the planes, whenever the planes hit the buildings, that this is what we would see right here. And if anybody, real quickly, I'm like, I know you may not be able to see but that there was like people, there will be people jumping from the buildings, and I can remember that too, that people jumping from the buildings, and people were like one or two, that the number of things that were going on during that time on September 11th, that people were jumping out of the buildings, a lot of debris that was coming out of the buildings. So it's like that could have been a day. I guess I heard it was on election day, so a lot of people were going to the polls just to place their vote for who. I guess I don't know what was on the ballots during the time, but still that. That was before I was even a registered voter. I was only 17 years old during this time on September 11th. So that was before I was even old enough to be a registered voter. But still, that during the time I would have been about only 17 years old. I would have only been 17 years old during this time on September 11th, 2001. And whenever I got the news right here, and I kept thinking about, like I told you about too, that that the pilots had too much to drink last night. Looked like, because the way the planes were flying, to where it didn't even look like that. It was like anybody say, predicted if it was an accident, because whenever I first seen this, it like that did not look like a test, like they were just test flying the aircraft. It did not look like that, the pilots who lost control of the plane and they crashed it into the building, but the plane was hijacked. And I can remember the first 4 weeks after September 11th, I can remember that, people told me that, the planes were hijacked. And so it's like, that with the hijacking, that basically meant is toward it, stuff that you would maybe see on those movies. Like, I don't know if anybody has ever seen Air Force One, the movie Air Force One, but still, that a little bit of that too, to where whenever a plane that gets hijacked, that knowing about how to get the people off the plane, but still, that whenever a plane is hijacked, it seems like to where that you're like warned to where that for who's on board the plane, that just a number of things that's going on. It seems like it's kind of a little bit out of the question too, to where that why is it this or why is it that before the planes left the airport, and knowing about how they got on board the plane, because nowadays you want to where even if you're boarding planes, flights, even from overseas, that I'm sure that they would check some sorts of passport. And if anybody say if it's for business reasons or anything like that, yeah, I would think too that yeah, those terrorists, you heard about that too. Those terrorists may have been able to do their homework, but how come us Americans? How come us Americans were not able to do our homework? Just to be able to fight back, just to take control of the plane and saying that, hey, if you don't like us Americans, hey, well, why are you one? So yeah, if anybody say, if you were to fight back for your country, then what do you think that you would do? What do you think that you would say? And chances are that maybe you would say is to her that, yeah, well, I don't think killing everybody on board is the answer. I really think, though, is to her that, if anything, that, we'll go somewhere and talk, if anything. But still, that if anybody were to say that a number of things that you can do just to help improve the security measures. But talk about with my artwork right here, that this is available on the art store on Kuros.com. So if anybody that wishes to order a print, or if they like to get print just for something keepsake, but knowing about for Monday, whenever Monday morning comes around, that you remember about the 16th anniversary of September 11th. But other than that, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.